Paul Hembekides. You may know him as Hembo. Hembo, great to talk to you. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's always good to hear your voice, my friend. You do a great show. I love talking ball with you, as you know.
Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate that, and it's always a pleasure to be able to get to catch up with you. And you were top of mind for me, Hembo, earlier this week because you and Buster Olney were talking about Roman Anthony and the true tragedy that befell the Boston Red Sox, losing him to an oblique injury for the next 4 to 6 weeks at minimum. So I watched your clip and the way you guys broke that down, but what is the impact for the Red Sox not having Roman Anthony at the top of that lineup?
Considerable. I would not describe it as a kill shot. I would, however, describe it as a body blow, and a painful one at that. Not just because of the obvious. You lose good player, hurts the team, but because of the manner in which he was impacting the run scoring in your lineup on a daily basis, hitting at the top of it. As you well know, you saw the enormous impact that he was having hitting leadoff for a lineup that was really coming on, in large part because of how successfully he was setting the table. An OPS of over 1,000 in the leadoff position this year with a minimum of something like 50 plate appearances. I mean, he was literally the best leadoff hitter by that standard of measure in the entire American League. I mean, it's not my opinion. I mean, Roman Anthony, as the leadoff hitter for the Boston Red Sox, was matching, and that's an enormous responsibility. And when you're able to have someone OPSing 1,000 in the leadoff spot, especially someone that you don't really have to mix and match because he does hit lefties, which is another rarity for a player that young that hits from the left side, it just provides you such a head start every single game. I think there was back-to-back nights in Baltimore that we saw leadoff home runs, if I'm not mistaken, that just jolts the offense in such a considerable way. And when you can combine the slug that he was demonstrating with the swing decisions that we have always known that he has, I'm just not sure there was a player that you were less equipped to lose, maybe aside from Garrett Crochet, than Roman Anthony. In fact, I would go as far as to say, Bud, that at the time in which he got injured, if you had asked me, gun to my head, who's going to win the American League this year, I would have told you the Boston Red Sox, because I loved the way the team had been building throughout the season and figuring out its starting rotation and cementing its bullpen and finally getting the lineup ducks in a row. But losing the leadoff hitter from a team is just such a significant blow. I think there's enough depth right now that the Red Sox have the ability to still cruise into the postseason. I really do. But I think how well and how quickly he responds to this injury and how impactful he can impact the baseball, for lack of a better term, once he does come back, I think that's ultimately going to be the biggest question that the Red Sox need to answer in terms of their aspirations for high-level winning.
On the topic of the at-bats and the swing decisions, because that certainly jumps off the page when you watch Roman Anthony's game. Do you remember seeing a rookie that has used their at-bats and has gone through their at-bats at a level with the maturity that Roman Anthony has, despite being 21, 22 years old? Do you remember any player working like that?
So Alex Fora a couple weeks back said something to the effect of, he reminds me of Soto, which is something that is almost sacrilegious by baseball terms, because Juan Soto has been put in the same sentence, in my opinion incorrectly, but in the same sentence as Ted Williams, in terms of the at-bat quality, in terms of his swing decisions, his strike zone discernment. I mean, Juan Soto, as you well know, is just a ruthless at-bat.
Right.
And, you know, he is, like, the floor is top 10 hitter on earth, and when he slugs, it's the best hitter on the planet. That's how good Juan Soto is. So I was comping Roman Anthony to Kyle Tucker when he was called up, but his swing decisions are better than that. I mean, I think Juan Soto is actually the most appropriate comp. Not necessarily as good as, I'm not necessarily equating, but I can compare without equating, and that I think is actually the best comparison to make. For a 21-year-old to have a 13% walk rate is almost unprecedented. It's super rare, and it's the highest since Juan Soto. For his chase rate, just the percentage of pitches that he swings at outside the strike zone to be as low as it is, the lowest by any player at 21 since Juan Soto. And when you couple that skill, an extraordinary one, with the fact that 6 out of 10 balls he puts into play, he does so at 95 plus miles an hour, we're talking about rare stuff, rare skills, rare ability. Like, I think if you were to, I think what we often do in Major League Baseball is we'll take some cross-section of young players and lump them in a bucket and say these are ascending stars within the sport. And I don't like doing that because Roman Anthony's better than all the rest. I mean it when I say it. this is the one. Like, this is the player who, for example, had he not signed the extension, he's the next $500 million player. He's the next $700 million player. He is the Hall of Fame talent. I feel confident in saying so because there isn't a blemish in the profile. There's not one. I'm telling you, bro, if he can improve his angles, his ability to elevate the baseball with some regularity, which is usually the kind of thing that happens in a player's mid to late 20s,
right.
This is an MVP. This is a player on a Hall of Fame trajectory. And I'm not one who's prone to hyperbole, but I'm also one who's prone to delivering exactly the information and the opinion that my eyes and the back of the baseball card tell me. And that's what it's telling me.
Certainly music to my ears as a Red Sox fan. But Paul Hembekides of ESPN joining us here on WEEI. You can follow him on Twitter at Paul Hembo if you don't already. Catch him on Get Up as well as the Baseball Tonight podcast. And if you're looking for a gift, I know it's a little early to talk about the Christmas and holiday season, but you can get his collaborations with Mike Greenberg, Got Your Number, and Got Your Answers in bookstores right now. So you talk about the Red Sox still being a playoff caliber team. They were apparently your American League favorite with Roman Anthony, but still team to watch in the American League. What else intrigues you specifically about the offense of the Boston Red Sox that gives you that kind of confidence?
The mixing and matching. So, look, I did a video, I don't know, maybe a month ago or so now, in which I think did the very best I could to articulate why the Red Sox traded an excellent player in Rafael Devers and still got better because of the cascading effects. In short, Rafael Devers is one of the dozen or so best hitters on earth, and everyone acknowledges the fact that the Red Sox distressed their own asset, traded him for 50 cents on the dollar. That being said, that's a story that Red Sox fans have seen before, most notably in 2004, as you well know. And so, not to necessarily compare those situations like for like, but what trading Rafael Devers did, as you well know, is provide Alex Cora with way more optionality than he had otherwise. And the ability to put Rob Refsnyder in to just bang against lefties is so valuable. And the ability to be able to move Cedar Rafaela from center field to second base in a whim is so incredibly valuable, and so on and so forth. And it's not that often that a team has the ability to roll out a different starting lineup basically every single night based upon matchups, based upon platoons, and based upon the fact that every hitter in the lineup is rowing in the same direction. And that's a big component to the Red Sox this season. There's a lot less I and there's a lot more we. And that's a really big deal in baseball because even though these are individual at-bats and matchups, me versus you, there is still a team component to this. There is still a complementary winning component to this that the Red Sox have now mastered. Their defense has improved considerably despite the fact that Rafael Devers was not playing defense. But the fact that he was log jamming the designated hitter position was a huge deal because you couldn't necessarily mix and match your defenses and your platoons accordingly because you obviously just needed to put him in the lineup and DH him every single day, and then you figure out the other 8 spots. Well, now all of a sudden you have a Swiss Army knife lineup. So to me, that ultimately is what the next month is going to look like for the Boston Red Sox. Without Roman Anthony hitting at the top of the lineup, how successfully can Alex Cora craft his starting lineups on a daily basis to ensure that he's maximizing his run-scoring output now because he doesn't have the best leadoff hitter in the American League anymore? To me, from 30,000 feet, I don't watch every single at-bat like you do, but from 30,000 feet, how much can Alex Cora, how much value can he extract out of this lineup considering the injury to Roman Anthony?
Hembo, on the other side of the coin in the American League, Garrett Crochet has been exactly what Red Sox fans were hoping that he would be, which is a Cy Young candidate. Could you make the case for Crochet as a Cy Young winner, or is there too much competition around him?
I'm so glad that you asked because I was giving strong consideration to texting you this afternoon and saying, I need you to ask me this question because I have a strong opinion on it.
Okay.
So I decided not to lead the horse to water, but you led me there anyway.
Okay.
I'll say this as straightforwardly as I can. I hope nobody in Detroit is listening. Garrett Crochet is the Cy Young Award winner in the American League. And if I had a vote, I do not have a vote, I would cast it for Garrett Crochet. Now, plenty can change in the next 3 weeks. But I want to do the very best I can without, diluting the conversation to explain to you how I think elementary, how reductive, how unsophisticated so many of our awards conversations are. Typically, what we'll do is just reduce everybody to the surface level statistics on Baseball Reference or Fangraphs that you happen to value, and then you just argue around those. And the reason I'm not here for it is because we have the ability to be so much smarter, so we should be smarter. And so if the smart information told me that Tarek Skubal was the Cy Young Award winner, I would present that case and tell you that I think Garrett Crochet should finish second. But that's not the case to make. That's not the smart case to make. The smart case to make is that starting pitchers, unlike position players, have a very different profile in terms of the hitters that they face 30 or 32 times a year. So in a hitter's case, right, you come to the plate 600 times in the season. And so on balance, you're going to see the approximate same level of pitching league-wide. So if you're comparing MVP candidates, let's say an outfielder for the Angels versus the shortstop for the Royals, just as an example.
Yeah.
On balance, they're going to have seen approximately the same quality of pitching across the board. That is not the case when it comes to starting pitchers. You're talking about 200 innings, and the opponents that you are facing are obviously largely division-driven. So what I did was merely look up the performance of Garrett Crochet and Taras Skubal basically against the top third of the league and the bottom third of the league when it comes to just how good the lineups you faced were. And the overwhelming evidence says that Taras Skubal, his numbers are off the charts. But if you weight them in terms of opponent quality, Garrett Crochet comes out first by a lot. If you look at this, like the top third lineups in the league, right. Garrett Crochet has like 20 more innings with comparable results, whereas the bottom third of the league, Taras Skubal very much pads his stats. This is not nefarious, but Taras Skubal very much pads his stats against some of the very worst lineups in baseball, of course, because those reside in the American League Central. It is profoundly unfair to penalize Garrett Crochet for pitching primarily against American League East opponents, as simply as I can put it. If you're going to put Taras Skubal above Garrett Crochet on your Cy Young ballot, I'm good with it. But you're going to have to explain to me. You're going to have to explain to me how these guys have produced comparable numbers despite facing very different lineups on a consistent basis. I feel strongly in saying so, and as probably like a month or so from now, I think you'll hear me come out a lot more strongly once we have the full set of data arguing in favor of Garrett Crochet because he did more with better competition.
Well, I certainly look forward to hearing that argument again because I enjoyed it the first time. And make sure you follow along at Paul Hembo so you can follow the content ahead of the MLB playoffs, and make sure you download the Baseball Tonight podcast. Catch him on Get Up on ESPN as well. Hembo, quickly before we let you go, talking a bunch about the Red Sox, but who are the other teams that intrigue you most in the American League, and where do the Red Sox fall in the power ranking of the AL as you see it?
So you could ask me that question 3 days from now, and the answer would be different than it is right now.
Fair.
I feel, candidly, that the strongest teams in the American League right this second are the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Houston Astros. That's not going to be an answer that a lot of the small market team fans like to hear, but the Yankees have the best lineup. I think the Red Sox with Roman Anthony have the best collection of players, the most ways to beat you, and the Astros with Yordan Alvarez coming back and the starters that they have in their rotation, with all the muscle memory of having succeeded, I think definitely have a strong case to be made. But ultimately, the best way I can put it is this, my friend. It's not going to be about how good you are. It's going to be about how hot you are when it comes to the American League playoffs. You're not going to be looking at season-long data sets and saying, like, oh, this team's slightly better than this one. No. It's going to be how good were you down the stretch? How healthy are your starting pitchers? How effectively is your lineup rowing in the same direction? These are going to be the kind of things that you look at. Basically, how good were you since the trade deadline, and how many different ways can you win? That's the question ultimately that the best teams in baseball answer, because as we've learned, a lot of these power-first teams can get you there, but they can't figure out how to manufacture runs in a 4-2 game in the playoffs. A lot of teams have starting pitching that can get you to the sixth inning, but all of a sudden it crumbles. A lot of teams have a dominant bullpen, but it doesn't matter if you're not building a lead, of course. So the Red Sox are the team that can answer the most questions in the affirmative, but I'm telling you, I do think that Roman Anthony is a critical enough piece to where I'm not going to be ready to proclaim them as my favorite to win the American League pennant unless I have a little bit more information down the line.
He is Paul Hembekides of ESPN joining us here on WEEI. Hembo, always a pleasure to be able to catch up. Enjoy the stretch run in Major League Baseball. All the best to you and your family. We'll do it again soon.